So to talk about gaining an understanding and studying into the virtues of the perfectly self-awakened Buddha. It's like what we have chanted before. We chant this recollection of the Buddha, of the Dhamma, of the Sangha, their virtues. If we gather the meaning of all of this together, we see that the perfectly self-awakened Buddha had these very highest, the most exalted of virtues. And that he had this goodness of wisdom, of intelligence, that he knew the things that should be known and saw the things which should be seen. He knew what has benefit and what brings drawbacks or harm. And things which are beneficial and things which aren't beneficial, he knew and saw this clearly. And even more deeply, he knew into the Four Noble Truths. And all of this no one had taught him, but rather he discovered for himself. So as one who gained this knowledge by himself, he didn't have any teacher. And so therefore we say that he has this virtue of wisdom, of panya. And then he came to teach and be of benefit to all beings. He was able to abandon those things which are the most difficult things to abandon, the defilements in the heart, that which brings the heart down, which makes it gloomy and sad. He could let all of this go. And things which had been in the heart for a very long time, is able to give all of those up, all of those defilements. He is able to completely and permanently defeat these defilements within his heart. So his heart came to the state of purity, and say he has this virtue of purity. So we can see for ourselves these defilements which arise within the heart. There's doubt, for example. There may be doubts appearing in the present moment, or doubts about things that happened in the past. And sanya's memory comes up, and then we can worry and doubt about that. And so these memories come up, we think about them again, there's proliferation that happens all over again. Or it could be things that we don't like, that a memory of that comes up and we feel averse towards it. Or maybe averse towards ourselves, we hold grudges against ourselves, that in the past we've done this and we've done that. Or hold grudges towards other people. Or if it's something that has happened which we like, then there's a different kind of proliferation that happens. But these are all obstructions. And so there's this desire for sensuality, and there is ill will, and there's drowsiness when we're practicing, there's doubts, and there's the restlessness of mind. And so when our mindfulness and samadhi, this collected firm nature of mind, is weak, then whenever the mind meets with an object, and that object will drag the mind along, it will carry on pulling it and pulling it. And we can see that these things are extremely difficult to abandon. But a perfectly self-awakened Buddha, he was able to give all of them up. He was the first to have done that, to have reached the state of purity. And in order to do that, he needed to build up incredible amounts of bharami, these spiritual qualities first, in order to be awakened, to become Samma Sambuddha. And so this bharami that he built up, he did so for countless lifetimes, through his kindness and compassion for all beings. He created this bharami, these spiritual qualities, to be of benefit and to be able to teach all beings, and so that they could overcome the suffering that they experience. even though it was extremely difficult to do that, he still went through it to be able to awaken. And then when he reached this awakening, he taught. He didn't just seek out his own individual happiness, but rather he went out to teach, and through the kindness and compassion that he had, and so that all beings may benefit and may understand, know and see the Dhamma, may gain this correct understanding and correct knowledge. So the Buddha had these three virtues of his wisdom, compassion and purity, and that he knew in line with truth and this right view and right knowledge. And he gained this through his own efforts, well established in these qualities of kindness and compassion, in order to go and teach the Dhamma. And so with the Dhamma we can separate this out into pariyatti, and so the studying of the Dhamma, and then there's the patipatti, so taking that knowledge that we learn and then putting that into practice. Having memorized it already, having brought it up in the mind, then we practice in order to bring our hearts to peace. So a way of doing that is bringing up this highest respect that we have towards the Buddha and recollecting his qualities very frequently. And so like the food that we find to be delicious, we like to eat that very frequently because we like it. And so there also needs to be this liking that we have towards our meditation objects, what we call chanda, this wholesome desire, in reciting Buddha or Dhamma or Sangha or Buddha me nato. Although we recite that the Buddha is our highest refuge. So we recite this and we also put that into practice as well. And once we've practiced in a sincere, strict way, and then samadhi arises, wisdom arises. And here we gain the benefits and the goodness of the Dhamma. And so people who practice in line with the Dhamma, they look after their bodies and minds, and keep them in a state of purity, able to abandon all of the coarse defilements already, so that their mind doesn't drop, it doesn't fall into a gloomy or sad state. And there may be objects arising within the mind, but the mind doesn't fall into any saddened state. So usually for us, when an object appears within the mind, and then we start proliferating on that, and then the mind falls down. But we need to be teaching our minds then, in order for them to have a good foundation, so they don't fall, and so the wisdom is able to arise. And so when we've practiced already, and then this wisdom can come up. And so this is one of the benefits of Dhamma practice. And the benefit is that it prevents the mind from dropping down into lowly states, that we become established in goodness, so that the mind doesn't fall down into darkened or saddened states. And so in people who practice, this is what they experience. And then eventually the mind reaches a state of purity following the Buddha. And here is where the Arya Sangha arises, the noble Sangha, the members comprising those who have reached Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, or Arahantship. So this stream entry, or once returner, non-returner, or complete awakening. and those who have well established themselves in right view, and who have this firm faith in the triple gem. So we have this gem of the Buddha, of the Dhamma, and of the Sangha. And so those coming to ordain need to have a heart which is firm in their faith towards the triple gem, towards these three refuges, to take them up as one's refuge. And so we set our hearts, just like as we chant, that I am a servant to the Buddha, that the Buddha is my Lord and guide. And so that's true for the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha. We take the Buddha as our object of recollection and as our refuge, and take the Dhamma, the Sangha, as our objects of recollection and refuge. So as we chant, Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammang saranang gacchāmi, Sanghang saranang gacchāmi. And so I take the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha as my refuge. This is my highest refuge, my most excellent refuge. So we recollect the triple gem in this way. We also recollect that the purpose for our ordaining is to realize Nibbana. And for that, we need to really set our hearts on that well. We need to study well. We need to be firm in our intent. And so, for example, we study into the body, and the 32 parts of the body. And so the first 5 being Kesa, Loma, Naka, Danta, Tacho. And so we learn to recite those backwards, forwards. Kesa, Loma, Naka, Danta, Tacho. Tacho, Danta, Naka, Loma, Kesa. So hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin. And so initially we are taught these 5 out of the 32 parts. We should understand how these are unattractive things, and they're just natural elements. We understand these 5 parts first. So we come to contemplate them, can bring up the color that they are, ask ourselves, what is the color? What is their smell? Where do they arise? So like hair of the head, it arises from the head. And what's its color like? If we don't wash our hair, then a certain smell will arise. What's that smell like? Well, these teeth within our mouths, they're just bones. If we don't brush the teeth, then bacteria start to grow on them. And then they can decay. At the very least, this unclean smell will appear from them. And so we study into these 5 parts which wrap up the body. And the inner parts are even more unattractive. We contemplate how all of these are just elements. They're not beautiful, they're things that must decay and break apart. So we recollect these for the sake of bringing our minds together into a peaceful state. And so this is the recollection of the body, having mindfulness over the body. So we look to see the body in terms of its unbeautiful aspect, and this is asubha. If we look at it in terms of the 4 elements, and this is element contemplation. And we do whatever way that we find works, and we carry on with that until we become skilled. And when we're skilled, then peace arises within the heart, and we can see into the true nature of the body. But we need to study about this first. So those practitioners who ask to come to ordain, they need to study. And they also should see how this opportunity to ordain, it doesn't come about easily at all. We have to have been born as a human, to have met with the Buddha's teachings, to have stayed alive till at least 20 years old. And it's really not easy to have all of these factors come together. We must have created a lot of merit and a lot of barami in the past to have had this opportunity. And so gaining this opportunity already, we should set our hearts on it well. The samaneras, the novices, they have the 10 precepts that they take up. So in order to become a novice, all one has to do is take these 10 precepts and take refuge in the triple gem. And one is a novice. And then when one goes through the higher ordination, and he gets the 227 precepts of a bhikkhu. So those who have ordained, whether it's a monk or as a novice, they need to take nisaya, so they take dependence upon their preceptor and their teacher. And so we ask to kind of take up this dependence, to rely upon our teacher. And it's like we've been born again, and our preceptor is our Father now, who looks after us, who teaches us, who finds the 4 requisites for us. And the duty that we have now then is to practice in line with the Dhamma and the Vinaya. So the preceptor has the duty to teach us and also to see whether we are an appropriate candidate or not. Is there someone who is appropriate? Are they able to remember to bring up the methods of the practice? Will they conduct themselves in a way which brings up respect and faith in people? And if they have these qualities, then they can then be taken on as a disciple of the preceptor. And also having set our hearts on ordaining, that we, in the ordination process, there is chanting in the Pali language. And so we have the names that we were given when we were born, and these are of different languages, of Thai or English, etc. But we change that to be a Pali name for the ordination ceremony. And also our teacher has his name in Pali, which we need to know, so that when we're asked during the ceremony that we can correctly chant the answer, both to our teacher's name and our own name as well. And so the preceptor also has the duty to bring us into the Sangha, and so that the community can then accept this individual as a member of the Sangha. And Ajahn Chah, he taught people that when they're just ordained, he said, look around you and remember all of the monks here, that all of them have received you and allowed you to ordain. It's not just your preceptor, but it's all of the members of the Sangha here. So he taught this in order to bring about respect in people, respect towards those who are more senior to us, whether it's just 5 days or even just 1 day, that he taught us to have respect for them. And this is how the awakened teachers instruct. So we come to study and we come to practice, and so that insight arises. This is something that we need to be able to bring up within us, even though in the beginning it's quite difficult. You see how the thoughts can arise very quickly in the mind. If the mind is just in a state where it's not really doing anything, there's not much activity, then there's naturally peace there within it. But when a memory appears, and then we go and cling to that memory of the past. And then there's all this proliferation that happens on top of that, isn't there? And so we see how, so when that happens, then the defilements are in charge of the mind already, and they pull the mind along. So we need then to bring up mindfulness in order to understand the nature of these memories and of the proliferation, and to know that that's what is happening. To know that the mind is currently proliferating, and then to tell ourselves that these are unsure things, that they don't last. To not be deluded by these memories, to see how these memories, they're not me, that the mind is the mind, and the objects which appear in the mind are just objects. They're two separate things. And sometimes good things appear within the mind, sometimes bad things, but they all arise and cease. They're empty. So we should train ourselves to see this and to practice in this way, to do this a lot, to do this frequently. And if we can do this, then that shows that we have the mindfulness there, knowing the mind, able to fix any problems that appear within the mind. So we need to get it to that state so that we don't suffer. And to get there, then we need to put our efforts into doing walking meditation, sitting meditation, bringing the mind to a state of stillness so that whatever moods arise, whatever objects appear, we're able to fix those. We're able to overcome them. But if the mind isn't still, if it's not peaceful, then whenever an object appears, the mind will just carry on proliferating. And then the suffering just carries on and carries on. That we fall into hell again and again. There are doubts again and again. We get angry again and again. But as we carry on with our practice, and then over time this gets easier. You carry on with this practice of not allowing the mind to fall into liking or disliking towards whatever it is that appears within the mind. And so there are these memories about the past, and there's thinking that happens due to that. And we can see how the defilements, they like to bring up memories of bad things. The things which are good, they don't really come up so much. But that which pulls the mind down, which makes it gloomy, those are the memories that the defilements bring up. But we shouldn't have the idea that I don't want for any of this to come up at all, or if this just wasn't happening at all, then I would feel at ease. It's not like that. But rather what we do is we observe how these memories appear, and once they've appeared, then they cease. And when we don't attach to any of it, then that's when we really feel at ease. So we should train our minds like this and do this a lot. And also when we've ordained, and then we study into the 4 things which we should practice and the 4 things which we should never do. And these are the things which our preceptor teaches us. So the 4 things that we should never do is engage in sexual intercourse, to steal, to kill a human, or to claim any superior states that we don't have within us. And then there are the 4 things which we should do, which is to go on alms round and to stay at the foot of a tree and to use rag robes and to take fermented urine as medicine. And all of this really means that we are one who is frugal and content with little. And if we can just understand this, then we know the way of practice. So may you look after your heart well. When you care for your virtue well, then this gives rise to samadhi. And samadhi, which is well nurtured, then gives rise to wisdom. Wisdom, which is well nurtured, gives rise to freedom. So we need then to see, and to see the defilements within the mind, the defilements which have been training our minds up till now. To know any proliferation which happens about memories that have come up, and to see how, okay, right now the mind is thinking again. It's proliferating upon a memory again. And then when we do that, then we're aware and up to speed with all the things that are happening within the mind. And when we have that knowledge, then we put our efforts into not allowing the mind to going into liking and disliking. And this here is the path to Nibbana. So may you set your heart on this.